Welcome back to The Next Film. Alongside our conversations with these incredible guests, this show, The Next Film, also documents the real-time journey of making my next feature film. I was going to start this show sometime last year, but I realized that I really want to just keep the script stage and writing stage precious and not talk too much about the process. So since we're a little further in the process, we actually just sent out our first offer to an actor yesterday. I'm going to go back to the beginning because a lot of people think that the beginning of a feature film starts with writing the script, but for this film in particular, it did not. There was a lot, almost like a whole year before we even wrote a single word, and even longer if you count the fact that it was a short film first. Journey first began when I got the rights to the short story. Mindy McGinnis, the author, was someone who I admired and loved a lot of her novels, and she had this short story that I had put away for a few years and marinated on, and it got to the point where I reached out to her to get the rights. I sent a simple email just introducing myself, what I loved about the story, and that I wanted to adapt it. And luckily, she owned the rights herself, so it was fairly easy. I did get in contact with her agent, and we put together just a simple agreement since it was a short film, so there was a lot less legal liabilities with that. So after making the short film, she loved it. She raved about it, said, it was probably the best version she would ever expect of someone adapting her work. And so that foundation and that relationship was already off to a great start. And then the short film went off to do a lot of festivals, win some awards. And it was then that I realized that there was a lot more I wanted to do with this character and the tone and the story, and wanted to adapt it into something further than just a short film, because that was not my initial intent when I did the short. So before reaching back out to Mindy for the rights for the feature version, because the contract we had was only for the short, I actually marinated on it even more for almost a whole year. I outlined a lot. I made a lookbook. I really got clear about the arc of the character I wanted and the reasoning behind it. I just really wanted to make sure that there was something here and something that I was really excited about to make. So that way, when I did eventually reach out, I wasn't wasting anyone's time, and that I was going to be showing up as someone who, went through with what they said they're going to do and showed up to see it through. Once I felt like I was in a good spot, the first thing I did was reach back out to Mindy, letting her know my thoughts of where I was with the feature adaptation, what I was thinking for the character and the overall story. I'll actually go ahead and read you that exact email. I'm reaching out because I've been working on new ideas inspired by the Vagina Dentata short story and short film. I wanted to share where my head is at. After adapting the story into the short, I've been imagining and outlining what could happen after Taylor gets the retractable teeth installed, and I believe there's a compelling idea for expanding it into a feature. The idea would be that the short film is used as inspiration for the cold opening, and then the remainder of the film would follow Taylor's journey with this newfound power, using the niche quote, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process, he/she does not become a monster," as the core theme. As you may have already heard, the industry is very slow and dry right now, which is why I don't want to wait around for anyone to give permission and would like to begin this journey independently, as I had success doing so with my first feature. Additionally, moving forward independently allows for greater creative control, ensuring the story stays true to its vision and is protected. Another reason I'd like to begin moving forward now is I'd like to get this into production in the next 12 to 18 months with a 2027 release in mind, which would be 20 years after Teeth came out. I've had a lot of people bring up this film since making the short version, but I feel it isn't a great comparison because the only similarity is just the Vagina Dentata premise. Teeth was made from a male POV, and I don't think the female protagonist was empowering for women. A big difference already is that in Teeth, she was born with a Vagina Dentata and spends the majority of the film afraid of them, her body and her sexuality. Whereas in this version, she makes the choice about her own body, getting the teeth installed, and then is empowered by them. I'd love to have a new Vagina Dentata movie from the female perspective, and I think the world could use, in parentheses, and love, it too. I believe there's a unique opportunity with the potential tone of this project that would make it stand out, and I'm confident I'm the right person to bring it to life, considering the success so far from just the short version, my ability to tackle the film and these themes fearlessly, in parentheses, something Hollywood is afraid to do. And since reviews of my first feature highlighted my strengths in handling tone, one critic noting, "Davis commands tone like a seasoned master." I'd love to discuss the permission to move forward and rights for the short. so I may be able to proceed with crafting the script and seeking some development funds. Since I'll be moving forward independently, I'd love to discuss the possibility of a smaller upfront payment from the development funds, with a larger payment coming later, either during pre-production or production. Please let me know what you think, and I'd be thrilled to start discussing. Thank you. Okay, so obviously one thing to consider here is that I already had a relationship with the author. I had already, got her trust when I adapted the short story and not only executed it and saw it all the way through, but made a version of it that she really liked and won some awards. After that email, she loved the idea and immediately looped in her agent. And then this process took a lot longer than I thought it was going to. The agent first suggested that we discuss the creative idea or the creative direction so that we were on the same page. I sent her my in-depth lookbook that I created and spent all year creating, with the tone, some more details, and all those things I've been thinking about. Again, she loved it. But then she actually asked if I would be open to her participating in it and pitching herself in the writing process. I think at first I was a little nervous with that, just because you never know how someone might want their work perceived. And I think also just like a little bit of ego or need for control came up, but I stayed open to the idea. I felt like my higher self was telling me to stay open. And then I introduced the idea of having a Zoom first, because in the past, there's definitely been times with friends where you get along with people, but sometimes the way you work might not be might vibe the same. So we hopped on a Zoom to see what our vibe was, how we both like to work, and just instantly it went really great. We're both very open to collaboration. She's had a lot of collaborations with writing novels in the past. I co-wrote my first feature too, so I kind of pitched her that idea of how my first feature went, where we meet up once a week and talk out ideas, develop things, and then I'll go off 5 days of the week and write the script. And we'll continue that back and forth as we go, but I would be doing the majority of the writing. So after our Zoom went really great, she connected me back to her agent, so that way we could start discussing the deal points for all of this. Because again, after some lessons from my first feature and also just lessons I've heard from other people, we needed to have the contracts in place and all the deal points agreed upon before a single word was written. So we started that process with the agents. We went back and forth with just trying to talk out the deal points. We were starting to approach the holiday months. So as you know, in the industry, people aren't as responsive around this time. So I had to follow up quite a bit. But it got to the point, I will go ahead and read you the exact email again. So this is to one of her agents. Hope you had a lovely weekend. Excited to get this going. As I mentioned, looping in my manager and attorney so we can get this journey started and we're all on the same page. I'm sure Mindy has already made you aware. When I reached out to discuss turning the short film into a feature, she had asked about participating and wanted to transition into the film screenwriting space. We hopped on a Zoom call to see how we clicked and discussed how we would like to work. It went incredibly well and agreed to move forward. These are the items that we discussed. And then I bullet pointed the items we discussed for him, which were: we'll follow a similar writing process to my last feature. I'll spend 5 days a week writing the script independently, and we'll meet once a week over Zoom to brainstorm, discuss ideas, and refine character development. Then I go off again to continue writing or making adjustments until our next meeting. And then the next bullet point, I'll receive written and directed by credit, and Mindy will receive co-written with credit. And then in parentheses, as well as being the author to the short story, of course. This was something that I ended up adjusting later just because the WGA doesn't recognize the co-written by credit. So we ended up nixing that, but it was just like a nice little thing to agree upon in the beginning stage. And then the last bullet point was, while we're working together collaboratively, I'll retain final say on the script and overall vision, which was something that we had discussed in the Zoom that she was like very much open to, because the short story itself was only about like 2.5 pages. So a lot of what happens in the rest of the film and the overall idea was coming from me. So I felt like this was a very like specific and different case. I don't know if it would always be like that when you're adapting IP. But this was something that was really important to me, is to keep the final say on the overall vision and script. And then to finish off the email, I said, as I mentioned in my initial email, I would love to get this moving along before the end of the year and start to head into production within the next 12 to 18 months.
As long as this goes swiftly, ideally I'd like to start meeting come December and work until the end of March. I'll leave it there for now so we can focus on the creative collaboration and begin our discussions about the agreement. Let me know your thoughts or if you have any questions. Now, this is when I had to follow up quite a bit. Just reminding him, like, hi, just wanted to remind you about this. It took some time, and it got to the point where I just ended up emailing them the deal points that I was thinking of. And I was just like, it's been some time, so I think I'm just going to go ahead and bring up the bullet points in terms of, like the rates, the rights to the short story and things like that, so we can start discussing them. And then from there, he looped me in with another agent who handles all the film rights within their company. And then from there, it went to a phone call, some other emails. This was like a little bit of a having to convince process because this guy had been like a former studio executive, so we didn't really understand the independent film space. When I told him how much I made my first feature for, he couldn't even believe that movies could be made for that little. So there was a lot of convincing, but they were definitely willing to work with me, very excited and eager by the potential and the possibility, and also just something getting made. But I will say, when I first reached out to Mindy, it was probably like mid-September. I started talking with her first agent the early October. I think the phone call happened, it was sometime around Thanksgiving, maybe right before. And then obviously with the holidays coming up, there was all those negotiations, just took a long time. And then there was LA fires as well. So our final agreement wasn't done until about like early February. And Mindy and I didn't start writing until about mid-February is, I believe, when we started. So it definitely took longer than I thought, but I learned to be patient and trust the process. I definitely was so glad that we got everything, though, in writing. We agreed upon everything, so that way we all knew what we were going into before a single word was written. So including the short film and marinating on the short, all of that, I'd say it was about like 2 years until the script for the feature was even beginning to be written. From there, we spent about 4 months writing the script, maybe up to 5 with revisions. But it was absolutely like the best thing ever. I loved working with Mindy. She really pushed me in a new direction. Like, she brought out a lot of the darkness in me. She's a brilliant writer. Her novels, like, she's truly one of my favorite authors. And I definitely don't think that the script would be where it was without her. And it was also just so fun working together. So I'm so glad that I was open to that process. Also with the development funds, because that was a whole nother venture that overlapped with that because, there was a lot of negotiations happening. People need to get paid. Her and I were both getting paid to write the script as well. So I'm actually going to be talking about this in a future episode with my EP who's going to be joining us, Jeffrey Weber. And we're going to talk about how to pitch to an EP, what an EP is looking for, what makes him put money into a project and things like that. So we'll dive into those details at a later time. But just to give you a little insight into the process, I reached out to him, I want to say around October. So it was after I already knew I would be getting the rights to the short story and I had a clear vision for what I wanted. But obviously we also didn't even have a script yet. So I think we had talked a little bit over the past year since he was on the short film as well about wanting to turn it into a longer version. And so there was little hints here and there of how I've been marinating on it. And it was actually when I was going to New York for the premiere of my feature film that I reached out to be like, hey, I would love to meet up and chat about the feature if you have time. And I wouldn't say it was like a pitch at all. It definitely was, there was no formal structure to it. But it definitely had all the elements a pitch should have. I had a clear idea and vision for the film. I knew exactly what I was asking for in terms of how much the development funds would be and where that would be going. I already was setting up the bank account and the LLC, or the LLC, then the bank account. So that way the money had somewhere to go. And we already had that foundation and that relationship where he has invested in previous projects of mine and has been happy with the work we've been doing. And I've continued to show up and exceed his expectations. So there was a lot going into that meeting to where, the development funds were greenlit that same day. But that then allowed us to get that script written
and get the movie going. So that was almost a year now that we started writing the script. So it can be a long process, but it's definitely worth it. I trust the timing of it all, and it really feels like the momentum has been building now that we had a really good foundation. I'll be talking a lot more about all the details into how we're getting this baby off the ground, but I just wanted to start at the beginning because I do think it was a little bit of a different process than a lot of indie films start, just given the fact that it was an IP. There was a short film first, and there was a lot of things to get in place before a script was even being written. And luckily, it was definitely a risky bet for an investor or even, as writers to put our time into that investment in terms of, just trusting the fact that we were going to get a good script out of it and then turn it into an actual film, because there's a lot of things that don't end up getting made. The writing process was crazy. We ended up taking like a lot of different ventures. I got overwhelmed at one point thinking maybe it needed to be a TV show, but again, just trusting the process that we would eventually find our way and find our story. So I had a really good feeling about it from the very beginning before I reached out to anyone. So I will say that was probably the best foundation for all of that to work out. But yeah, I hope any of this was helpful or gave some insight and some inspiration into how to maybe get the rights or reach out to people. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions or want to hear about anything else in the process, or if there's any questions you have for guests that I have coming up. We have some really cool guests coming up. I'm trying to get different perspectives for the journey and different people and things that both I and maybe you are interested in. If you have any suggestions, I'd love to hear them. This is about both of us learning together in real time. So I want to hear from you. You can slide in our DMs at The Next Film Podcast on Instagram. You can email us as well, thenextfilmpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again. If you're enjoying the next film and want to help us keep making the show, we're now accepting tax-deductible donations through our partner, the Alliance of Women Directors. This helps us keep sharing honest conversation, insights, and practical tools free and accessible to artists. The link is in the show notes, or you can visit allianceofwomendirectors.org/fiscal-sponsorship. This episode is brought to you by executive producer Jeffrey Weber.
I'm already rolling on this because it's hilarious.
Oh my god.
That's so cute.
Aw, why'd you move from the mic,
You're so
MJ?
sweet.